marketer, real estate and stock investor, and I love to share my knowledge on economics, socioeconomics, and everything personal finance. Today I'm going to talk about a framework that I kind of made up called the liberal arts of money. This is a framework that I got the idea from because I went to a liberal arts school myself. I went to two actually, Augustana College in Illinois, Lingnan University in Hong Kong. So I'm kind of familiar with the liberal arts way of teaching and the philosophy. What made me kind of come up with this idea is now with AI, we can kind of see and tell that the critical thinking aspect of life, especially when it comes to our career, is going to be more valuable than ever. So I kind of want to take that same approach and apply it to business and personal finance. So what are the liberal arts? The liberal arts are the artes, which means skill, liberalis, which meaning free. That came from ancient Greek and Latin. And the philosophy is less about a vocational training and more about this broad perspective, interdisciplinary study of different subjects. So originally it came from two parts. So it had the trivium and the quadrivium. The trivium, which was grammar, dialect, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, which was arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music. So those were the original 7. And I'm going to have a screen recording if you can see already. The modern liberal arts are the humanities, so that's the philosophy, history, languages. Next would be the social sciences, that's psychology, economics, sociology. Next would be the natural sciences, that's biology, chemistry, physics, and then the arts, the fine arts, music, and theaters. So the liberal arts is kind of an interesting topic right now because, again, now that students are in school, AI is kind of taking over. They're seeing the value of these interdisciplinary studies because with AI, it can easily take over like a very specific area of study and kind of eliminate a whole job. We're really seeing that with a lot of tech type studies like data analytics. We're seeing that with computer science. Like they're being hit the hardest. Even this article by Inc. says the hottest college majors in the AI age just might be the liberal arts majors because they're so broad. They're the interdisciplinary studies. They're kind of timeless. So they really have a lot of relevance right now. Let's continue. So at liberal arts schools, they kind of have that philosophy of, it's kind of, I don't want to say like wonky, but very much like study, and it's not about career, it's about your passions. Like even when I went to liberal arts schools, they even had like a whole symposium day where students just hosted lectures about their favorite subject, kind of like this, but this was for college kids and their majors. You won't really find that as much at a big state school. So here's kind of an example from...
Because we are members of the human race. And
So this is the example from Dead Poets Society. Just
human race.
This isn't a liberal arts schools, but like the subjects and the matter in fact of which he talks about education and the different subjects is very much that kind of like the quintessential liberal arts message. So I'll just start the clip.
Cute. We don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we are members of the human race. And the human race is filled with passion. Medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for. To quote from Whitman, "O me, O life of the questions of these recurring, of the endless trains of the faithless, of cities filled with the..."
So you get the point. Robin Williams, rest in peace. Like I feel like this movie is shown at every like high school in America. But yeah, it's supposed to be like a philosophical, like, it's not supposed to be about your vocation. It's supposed to be very philosophical. So I wanted to take that kind of same mindset, but narrow it down to business and personal finance. So what are the 7 liberal arts of money? These are the framework that I came up with. So there are going to be 7 disciplines that separate those who build wealth and those who just earn it. So the thesis is most people are taught how to earn money, but nobody's taught how to think about it critically. And mastering these subjects, these 7 subjects, will help you reach financial freedom. So the liberal arts weren't designed to make you an employee, they were designed to make you a free thinker. So the 7, and just before I begin, I may turn this into a longer form video, like a more polished video. This is kind of just like a background into the framework. So if a lot of people are interested, maybe I can turn this into a bigger intro, a bigger video, or even an individual series on each framework. But let's continue. So the 7 are history. This is the map of every historic mistake. We have economics. This is how value moves. Sociology, how culture shapes wealth. Psychology, that's going to be our biggest mental obstacles. Finance, this is capital and capital allocation. Art is a creativity. Just don't earn, learn how to create. And communication, this is what unlocks every door. So the first one is history. So history is the study of patterns at scale, how civilizations rise, overextend, and fall. History doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. So that's like a classic saying. So history, what it does for us, it provides a window into the past that guides every financial decision that we make. We can look at history to find these broad patterns in the overall world and the overall economy. For example, in 2008, it rhymed with 1929, the large speculative bubble, the high consumer debt, the tons of retail investors investing into the market, and big institutional failures and breakdowns. You know, in 1929, people were saying like this shoe shine boy was making stock picks. So that same sort of mentality happened in 2008 when you have random people all of a sudden becoming real estate investors. We can also see in other historic examples for kind of our own personal lives and valuable lessons. For example, the British Empire. They overextended and then they collapsed. That's a lesson in lifestyle inflation. That's a lesson in taking on too many projects. I see this a lot of time with real estate. People have one house and they're doing good, but they overextend. They buy 3, 4, 5, they're in tons of debt. They can't manage all the debt. And then all of a sudden, you know, they're filing for foreclosure. Very similar to the British Empire, you know, obviously in England was the base in London, but they're managing colonies in the Caribbean, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, all over the world. They're overextended and eventually they collapse. So that same mentality throughout history can really show itself in our personal finance. Next is, let me scroll down, is economics. So this is the study of how scarce resources are allocated and who captures the value. Microeconomics explains why your salary is what it is, supply and demand for your specific skill set in your specific market. Macroeconomics explains why the Fed's decision affects asset prices, why real estate stocks go up during inflation, and why inflation erodes our savings. So understanding it gives you both a map and it forces shape every financial decision before we make it. Most people experience economics passively. They see the price of goods go up, they see how much more expensive things are, the market tanks, they panic and they sell. The economically literate person sees these things coming. They buy real estate asset before inflation hits, they buy assets at market bottoms, they deploy capital during recessions. Economics is fundamental in understanding capitalism and how wealth is allocated. So here is a video that really shows, let me just pop this up. Here's a video from an economist that really shows like the power of economics in a very simple way, especially in relation to capitalism. This is a really good book that I want to read, but maybe I'll make a video about it in the future after I finish it.
What is this? He called
calls the central contradiction of capitalism. So what is this central contradiction of capitalism? Throughout history, the annual rate of return on capital, which means the profits or the interest you earn from investing your money, usually exceeds the annual growth rate of the overall economy. Return on capital, or R, has remained relatively constant at around 5% despite radical changes in who controls the capital. It's generally the rich and individuals who inherit it, and whether it's held as gold, bonds, land, or in an investment portfolio. In contrast to this, the annual growth of an economy, or G, has almost always remained close to zero. It has only in the last 2 centuries reached a level of 1 to 2%. There's not much, short of revolution, that those individuals who rely solely on labor to earn a living can do to change it. Let me introduce Jane and Joe. They both earn $100,000 a year, but Jane also has a $10 million inheritance.
So that was a really good example of why economics is important. You can see the return on capital is whatever was like probably on average like 10%. I know the S&P 500 averages around 10%. The growth rate, which could be our salaries, goes up on average 2%. So understanding these economic forces will show you we need to be investing our money in real assets, stocks, gold, real estate, because those outgrow our salaries, which in the example he used the growth rate of the economy versus the return on capital. So the market is a mechanism for transferring wealth from the impatient to the patient in a form and from the ignorant to the uninformed. Next is sociology. Sociology is one of my favorites. Sociology is the study of how groups shape individual behavior, the invisible forces of class, culture, and values. The cultural capital, the non-financial assets that determine access to networks, opportunity, and resources. What jobs and careers are acceptable to you? What neighborhoods do you want to live in? Why you have grown your friends or why they have grown you. Sociology is valuable because we have so much data and support on different things that we didn't understand previously. So sociology is very predictive. A good example of how we can use sociology for our financial freedom is, for example, this is the Opportunity Atlas. This is created by Professor Raj Chetty at Harvard, and he pretty much studied social mobility and wealth inequality. And the main thing that he found was a term that he called economic connectedness, which was a combination of exposure to high income people and their friending bias. And he found this to be the most predictive metric of social mobility. And again, because we have the data, we can see this. So we have this whole map. We can use Chicago, for example, and he breaks it down to zip code, high schools, colleges of these high economically connected areas and these lower ones. So for example, we know stereotypically the South Side Chicago isn't the best. It's highlighted in red. If you look at the economic connectedness of these areas, it's in the 4th percentile. So people here have such a little chance of social mobility. Now, if we look at some of the really good areas like Wilmette, it's in the 95th percentile. Lake Forest is in the 96th percentile. We look at the exposure, we can even look at high schools. These are where the kids are getting the best educations. In the 98th percentile. My high school is really high up there too. It's in the 97th percentile. So when we study sociology, we get to take a look into these things, and it's going to allow us to really find a trajectory for our life path and even adjust it as well. So all these cultural habits, they're learnable, they're acquirable, and we can pass them on intergenerationally. So next is psychology, why humans do what they do, why they do things that are against their own interest. So psychology shows us that humans are not rationals. We are loss averse. We are present bias. We are status driven. So the pain of losing $100 is psychology twice as more powerful of the pleasure of gaining 100. And I see psychology really mess up a lot of investors. It's really what I struggle with the most too sometimes, because some people are just so risk averse. They're just not willing to risk capital, even though it's a good investment, to set themselves up in the long run. So the enemy of your financial future is not the market. It's a person making decisions about the market. So things like loss aversion keeps you in bad investments too long. Panic has you selling at the lows. FOMO, fear of missing out, has you buying at the highs. And the most expensive thing you can own is a poor mindset. So psychology is all about the mindset. Some people are scared to invest. They're skeptical of everything. They think everything is sunshine and rainbows when it's not. So they're not analyzing deals with a critical eye. So psychology is, again, the next framework that we really need to master on our way to financial freedom. Next, obviously, is finance. So how capital is allocated across time, how to make money work. Compound interest is not just studying money, but it's a study of time. Because we know over time, once things start compounding, that's when they really take effect. So finance is learning financial statements, asset classes, values, etc. This is the language that the wealthy speak, and they speak it fluently. Most people never learn this, but the rich, they think in statements and not transactions. Most people track what they spend. The wealthy, they track what they own. This is assets versus liabilities, income versus expenses, cash flow versus net worth. Understanding these makes you stop being a consumer and makes you being the CFO of your own enterprise. Finance is a framework for thinking about your resources across time. And I think that's a key. A lot of people think finance is very in the now, but these are long-term decisions, capital placements over the long run, 5, 10, 20, 30 years. So this is why finance, it's not just a study of numbers and money, it is a study of time, because that is the biggest asset. Next is art. This is one that I've always struggled with. I've never been that creative, but it's something that I'm really trying to get a lot better at, is art and creativity. So this is the discipline of making something out of nothing, creating value when there's no value there. Creativity is not a personality trait, it's a discipline. The ability to see connections when others miss it, to find new approaches to old problems, and build things that don't exist yet. In an economy increasingly run by algorithms, creativity is the only thing that cannot be automated, and that's our lived experience. So our salary, someone else decided it, but creativity is what we decide our worth is. Art is what happens when you decide it for yourself. The wealthiest people in the world are not employees. They're artists, they're creators, they're creators of content, companies, products, and systems. They create something the market hadn't priced yet. Every side hustle, every rental property, every dollar earned outside of your W-2 is financially creative. So learn to create things. The market pays creators differently than it pays employees. And I think this is a big, a lot of people, we get stuck in the 9 to 5, but we need to be more creative, have side hustles, and explore our artistic expressions and passions. This channel is a form of artistic expression, so we need to do this more often and really embrace it, regardless if we're comfortable at our jobs. Next, and the final one, is communication. This is the art of persuasion, the person who can move people with their words, the person who can articulate an idea clearly and compellingly. A business pitch, a negotiation, a job interview, a board meeting captures value that competence alone never unlocks. And I think that's so key. Like, being articulate and being able to communicate is such an underrated skill. It's so much harder than we expect. Even talking to the camera right now is extremely hard, but this is a skill that I know I want to develop, and it's helped me so much in business and work. Doing interviews well, negotiating deals. Like, most of the real estate I got the best deals from have been cold calls. So I'm just communicating to random people on the phone, but eventually working it out to a deal. So it's super, super crucial. So the person who can speak clearly and tell a compelling story about themselves will always out-earn the qualified person who cannot. Communication is currency. It compounds like money. Your reputation opens doors. So that's it on the framework. So So the most important skills is kind of just open-ended for the future. I think communication and art, I think those are going to be by far the most crucial skills in the day and age of AI. And where will that leave education in the future? I think the curriculum is going to change a lot. I think it's going to have to really adapt to all the things that AI can already do and really focus on those interpersonal skills, the human experience. And I think this is also going to play a very big role in socioeconomics because we already know so many people were on the bubble and skeptical of going to college. Now that they don't see a direct path to an education, I think it's going to cause a lot of people not to go. Maybe we can talk about this in another video, but I know this is a long one. Thank you guys for watching. Please let me know what you think of this format. Leave comments, likes, and yes, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.